Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to my channel, and today in this video, this third video of this series where we are going to create this GitLab MX project, right? I'm going to show you how we can create the Fetch project form with a TDD approach. Now, to be in sync, this is the repository URL which you can go to and you can check out the code. Everything is there. And recently what I have done is made one commit where I have made some UI changes. So I would say that you should go and check these out. These are basic HTML stuff, not too difficult to understand, and anyone who has basic Laravel knowledge should be able to understand what I have done. But the whole idea over here is that I have created a layout file. I'll just show you. I have this layout folder where I have my main app.blade.php, and then every screen, for example, the listing of the projects, extends that layout.app. Okay, and that is how I am rendering those pages. So if you see, this is how it looks. Now, as I said, today in this video, we will cover the TDD approach where I will try to fetch a project from GitLab through the add project form. Now, if we need to understand what is that the user will be doing and what will happen behind the scenes is something which we need to understand. So what I want is the user is presented with a form where the user can add the GitLab's project ID. And based on that, with the integration that I have done through Salon, it will be able to fetch the GitLab project data, and then our service will be able to create a new project based on the JSON response that we received. However, because this is an API call to a third-party service, what I will do is on the submit of the form, I'll just raise an event, and that event will have a handler which will run on a queued job, and it will fetch the response and then create the project, so that this entire thing is not happening on the main thread. It is happening asynchronously, and the user is able to get a quick feedback saying that we are ready to fetch the project. So let's get started and see how we can use the TDD approach to do that. So I'll walk you through the code changes, or rather the tests, and how things are working. First of all, we have the page response test, and because we have to create a new web route, I'm testing that it shows the project fetch page. This is just to ensure that the page is loading properly and nothing else. Now you would see that I am right now acting as a user. Now obviously, as of now, our project doesn't have an authentication in place. Our web route is also kind of open. If you see, the resource is not behind any middleware, but we will eventually get that. So right now I am just adding that so that I don't have to revisit this particular code. So this particular test is quite straightforward. I am making a GET request to the projects.create route, and I'm asserting that I'm getting a status code of 200. Now obviously all my tests are passing. If you see, I have right now 10 tests with 15 assertions, and they are working properly. So this is definitely working. But this is a very basic test. Now what happens to the actual fetch action? So for that, I came up with 3 different tests which will ensure that the functionality is working. As I said, because the form is going to raise an event, in terms of the responsibility, I think it is important to understand that what we will be testing as the first part is that the form works properly, it does the necessary validations, and Once the validation is passed, the form submits and it raises an event. That's about it. Because that is the only objective of the form. The objective of the form is not to actually create the project, actually fetch it, but rather just raise the event. Once the event is raised, we have an handler which will call a service, and that is going to fetch the project from GitLab. So we will handle the test for that particular service as a different test case. But this form is with different responsibilities. So the first test is to ensure that it shows a form with field to add project. So what am I doing over here? Again, acting as a user, I am going to that particular page and I am trying to assert that I can see this particular text. So let's understand what is happening. So I have my projects create. If I go to my project controller, I am returning this route, this view. So let's go to that view. And over here, I have this title. Okay. I can also maybe assert for this particular text, up to you. Basically, what I'm trying to do is ensure that this form is kind of visible. Okay. So I will come over here. Maybe I'll add this as well. Okay. Right. So this is our first test, pretty basic one. And what happens then is, the route takes the request to this particular controller. This controller returns this view. This view we saw is rendering this form. Quickly go through it. We have a block where we are showing the success message if there is one. I have a form of method post submitting to this URL. We have our CSRF field. Then we have our little bit of text and the input field. Okay, these are custom components. I have added them. The custom component here is basically a text field with some values. It takes the old values as well whenever it is there. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I wanted to ensure that I'm not again and again adding all those classes. So this is my input text. And if I have error, then I get an input error. Okay. You can also find that particular code in here. Pretty straightforward. Okay. Now we have a form, we have a button as well. Let's see how the page looks. This is what it is. Now, what is our next test looking like? We have one test which just asserts that the form is rendering. The second test is that the form renders an event when the project is requested for. So what am I doing over here? So the first thing is, because we are trying to assert that an event was raised, now obviously we can't raise an actual event, because if I do that, it is going to literally make an API call when I'm running my test, and that is not something which I want to do. So we have this event fake called over here. So what will happen is, because of this line, none of the events will actually get fired, or the handlers will not actually work. But during the testing, we will be able to fake all those things. We will be able to assert the behaviors of these events and those listeners, but they in reality will not get triggered. Okay, so this is where I'm making a post request to this particular URL, which is the URL where I'm doing my form submit. And I'm also passing the project ID because that is something which I want when the form is getting submitted. Now, this is my arrange and this is my act. After doing all these things, I am asserting that an event, this is the event, and this listener is listening to that event. And that is all that we want to do to ensure that the form is working properly. There is only one field, so we don't have too much complexity in it. We just send that field's value and we just ensure that and listener is listening to an event which got generated or which was raised when the form was submitted. And that's why if you look at the controller code, we have the basic validation, we are raising the event, and we are redirecting back with success. All right. So now because we have a validation, so now how I typically ensure that every line of code generally is being covered is this is something we have asserted. This is something which we haven't asserted because we haven't checked for the validation. So what I can do is over here, I have this third test, which is it shows error if project already exists. So I'm creating a project using the factory. Then I'm acting as a user. I'm making a post request with the same project ID. And when I'm doing that, ideally, it will generate a validation error. And those validation errors are stored in the session as errors, right? So we have the assert session has errors key function. And there I'm saying that please assert that the session has errors and these are the keys which I'm expecting. So if you have multiple fields and if you are looking for a specific field error, then you can just add that over here. In this particular form, we have only one project ID field, so things were simple. Right? And with these three tests, we are generally able to capture the entire thing. Now, in terms of the events and listener, so how do we register them? We have event service provider where the Fetch GitLab project event is mapped to this particular listener. If we look at the event, I am taking the project ID, and hence if you see, when I am raising the event, I am sending the project ID over here. Okay, these are named arguments. I really like this particular format, so I was playing around with that. Now, the event takes project ID on the constructor. It's a public variable because when I go to the event handler, which is this file, right? In here, Laravel will automatically call the handle method of every listener. And here I am type hinting that we are expecting an event which is of type Fetch GitLab project event, which is the exact event that is getting raised, right? And this event has a public property called project ID. So what happens is inside the handle method, I can get the project ID from $event project ID because this is being loaded by Laravel as part of its DI. Okay, so we get the project ID and then I have my service which I am injecting inside my handler. The constructor, this is for the handler or rather the event listener. So the listener's constructor is giving me the service file or the service class, not the file. So the this listener is giving me an instance of the service and the handle method gets the event. So I get the project ID and in here I just call the Fetch GitLab project service method. Okay, and that's how we are able to fetch the GitLab project. Now, we haven't written the implementation of this particular method because if you see, I'm just returning an empty array. But as I said, this is not the scenario where we are going to actually test for the creation of the project. We are testing the form. We are testing the page where the form is present, right? So we have page project fetch test, and that's where we are just testing the form's submission. That's about it. So yeah, this is how using a TDD approach, I was able to get this form into place. Now let's look at the database. I have multiple projects and I have one project which is 886. So let's refresh and do 8. If I hit save, it does say that the project ID is already taken. But if I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then if I hit save, it says project queued for fetch. So as you see, using TDD, I was able to create the entire form functionality or rather you can create. I was basically walking you through the code, but yes, without even going to the browser, you will be able to test most of the functionality of your controllers, your events and stuff without any worries. And right now we have 10 tests backing the code that we have written so far. So that's about it, guys. This is the third video of this series, and there are a lot of new features coming to this particular project. We have just started, and I'm pretty excited about this. I hope you are feeling excited as well. If you have any feedback, if you have any thoughts about certain aspects, then feel free to comment below. This is going to be a project management kind of an application where GitLab will play a key role in getting the issues from the projects and comments and stuff. But then there will be a lot of other functionalities on top to have a decent experience of managing a project. So thanks for watching, guys. If you like this video, then do click on the thumbs up icon and don't forget to subscribe to my channel.